Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dwayne Kimball, United States Army veteran, and today I'm bringing you another educational video as it pertains to the VA disability compensation claims process as a former Raider. So today's topic, the 20-year protection rule, but I'm gonna add a twist to it. A subscriber asked me a question this morning. Dwayne, if I'm service connected for a certain condition and assign a percentage, and I come in later or years later for an increase and get assigned a new percentage, does the clock start over again for the 20-year protection? I'm going to break it down today and explain what I saw when I rated claims for the VA. Make sure you stick around. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into it. I am so shocked that I have not done a video on this. I did one talking about the different protection rules. But what I didn't do is explain if you're already service connected, let's say, for instance, at 10% for 20 years, and you come back in for an increase and get service connected for that same condition, at the next higher percentage, 20%, does the clock start over again for that higher percentage that you've been assigned based on that increase? That's what I'm going to be discussing today. Now, the best way to do it, guess what I did? Went out to the VA's website, looked at the 38 CFR and the M21 manual reference, and you know it, I got a couple of slides for you, so let's go ahead and get into it. Slide number 1. Here in slide number 1, this is 38 CFR 3.951, preservation of disability rating. Okay, now we're going to look at subpart B, and it states a disability which has been continuously rated at or above any evaluation of disability for 20 or more years for compensation purposes under laws administered by the Department of Veterans Affairs will not be reduced to less than such evaluation except upon showing such rating was based on fraud. So we all know, or at least you should know by now, if you have an evaluation, meaning an evaluation, when you hear me say evaluation, it means percentage. That's VA rater talk for percentage. Sometimes we don't say 10%, we'll say, hey, they're rated at their evaluation, meaning what percentage are they service connected at, right? Okay, so we should know 20 years is protected. Even if the VA comes back for whatever reason, which I never did as a rater, just went back and purposely looked at somebody's case, pulled it and said, oh, let me see if this is fraud or something like that after 20 years, okay? So for whatever reason, the vet maybe came in for something else or whatever the case may be, that rating is protected. And especially if the VA finds, wait a minute, we weren't even supposed to grant service connection for this. They cannot take it away. Or they say, oh, we granted the veteran 50%. We should have only granted the veteran 0%. They cannot take it away. It is protected under the 20-year rule. Now, they can take it away based on fraud. Okay, guess what? I'm going to link a video I did talking about DBQ fraud at the end of this one, okay? Because that could fall into exactly what they're talking about right here, okay? Now, as I stated earlier, this is a twist. And the twist is, what if you have multiple percentages for a condition? Let's get into it. Slide number 2. So what I mean by that, before I talk about this here, what I mean by that, you got 2 percentages for one condition. You be, Dwayne, how is that? Okay. So example, veteran and service connected for PTSD at 10%, came in years later for increase, and now they're at 50%. That's what I mean by having 2 percentages. Okay. So this is the M21 manual reference. Now it's not law, but it's a guide that most raters use. Protection at lower than the current evaluation. Okay, again, protection at the lower than current evaluation. And it states, in some cases, the current evaluation may not have been in effect for 20 years, but the evaluation has been at a lower level for the requisite 20-year period. I'm going to give you an example, okay? But the VA's M21 manual reference, it gives you an example here, okay? You don't see these examples a lot, but some M21 manual references, when they're kind of a little bit difficult to understand, they give you an example. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. Example, a veteran is service connected at SC stands for service connection for a knee strain evaluated as 30% disabling. Current medical evidence supports a 10% evaluation. And it goes on to say, assume compliance with 38 CFR, and it gives a couple of 38 CFRs. Then it states the code sheet shows the following evaluation history. I'm going to list the video I did explaining what a code sheet is and showing the example, and I give you an example of a code sheet in my book, okay? And this is where you'll find that information. 0% in place for 30 years, 10% in place for 25 years, 20% in place for 21 years, 30% in place for 19 years and 1 month. That 30% is not protected under the 20-year rule. It started over when that veteran got that increase. The other three evaluations or percentages are protected. Okay? It goes on to say the 30% evaluation has not been in effect for the requisite 20-year period. Therefore, it is not and will not be protected for the purposes of the proposed reduction. What they're saying is, obviously, the veteran came in and a veteran came in probably for an increase or something like that. The highest protected evaluation is 20% evaluation since it was in effect for at least 20 years. Although the facts support only a 10% evaluation, the maximum reduction possible is 20%. Now, in this example, they don't explain the maximum reduction possible. But I'm going to explain it in the example that I'm about to give you. Okay, so I know it's clear as mud. Okay, you hear about 20-year rule, 20-year rule, 20-year rule, but you do not hear about, oh, I was service connected at 0%, 30%, 10%, like that example gave you. Are those other percentages protected? Okay, and that's another reason, one, you need to be educated on your claim, because this process, the M21 manual and 38 CFR, can impact what you might want to do in the future. Now, they gave you an example, but I'm going to try to give you a better example to help you better understand it. Okay, now, let's just say the veteran is service connected for PTSD at, let's say, 10%. 1990. Okay, we'll just round it off, right? 1990. Keep that in mind. 0% PTSD, 1990. Okay, the veteran comes back in for increase in the year 2000 and goes from 10% to 30%. So let's keep in mind the 0%, when is it protected? You got 2000, 2010. 2010, it is protected, the 10%. The veteran comes back in 2000 and gets increased to 30%. That 30% is protected when? 2020. Okay, we'll just use 2023 because, 2024 because we're in 2024, okay? So the 10 and 30 is protected. The vet comes back in 2010 and gets an increase to 50%. When is that 50% protected? 20 years. So 2010, 2020, that's 10 with 14 years. It's not protected yet. Okay? Now, 2020, the veteran comes in for an increase, try to go from 50 to 70 or 50 to 100. And that exam shows improvement. I bet you're thinking the VA is going to reduce them because that 50% is not protected under the 20-year rule, right? And still can't reduce them. Here's why. Even though that 50% has only been in effect for 14 years and not 20 years, in order for the VA to reduce the veteran based on improvement, if that 50%, which it has, been in effect more than 5 years, they need 2 exams that shows improvement to reduce. So they still can't reduce you. How do I know that? I was trained by the VA. They trained us on this particular situation. I remember it like it was yesterday. Okay? So again, I always preach education. That's why it's important, because let's say you get a rater that don't know or look at these regulations that I just showed you, and they do a proposal to reduce. Oh no, due process. Now they got to give you due process. And due process in this situation is, oh, your overall percentage is at 90%. We propose to reduce that 50% for PTSD, which will reduce your overall evaluation from, let's say, 90 to 80%. Now they got to give you due process. Part of that due process is an RVSR hearing. Guess what? I got a video on my YouTube channel where I explain an RVSR hearing. You know how I know that? Because as a former VA rater, I facilitated a bunch of RVSR hearings. Now, when you get in that hearing, what are you going to do? Oh, you're going to show these regulations that I showed you, and you're going to say, oh, wait a minute. Even though my last exam shows improvement, that percentage has been in effect more than 5 years, and you only have 1 exam that shows improvement, therefore you cannot reduce it. You need 2 exams. You shut the whole thing down. And you walk away with the same evaluation. But you got to keep in mind, they got 1 exam that shows improvement. You might want to wait till after that 5th year. Okay? Now, let's just say that reduction, that proposed reduction, if you have 2 exams that shows improvement, and there's a proposed reduction, right? If it doesn't affect your overall percentage, meaning it's not going to drop that 90 down to 80, if they reduce you and you still stay at the same percentage, there's no due process. They go ahead and they reduce it because it's not going to change your dollar amount. Okay? And there's a lot of situations around that. Those are just a couple that I think that'll help you understand. So I hope, again, that you understand the 20% rule, and as it pertains to each percentage that you have been assigned for that particular condition, especially if you start out at 0% and you work your way up through the diagnostic code criteria, and now you're at, let's say, 60% for that condition, and you got 3 different percentages that has been assigned, that 20 years starts over again for each one. Okay? So, with that being said, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and don't forget to share this video with your fellow veterans. Thank you.